Hello everyone, my name is NiLisheng. In the team presentation, you just saw my parts covering authentication, database, and integration. Now, I want to walk you through what I personally contributed to that, what I built, the decisions I made, and what I learned along the way. So within the team, I own three main areas. So first is the whole authentication system, login, registration, logouts, and the forget reset password flow. So second is the design database. I structured our MySQL database around a central user table, and every author table connects back to it. And the third is connecting the frontend and the backend together, making sure the React app and the Flask server could actually talk to each other properly. So, and getting everything deployed onto the server. In terms of how much of each task was mine, based on our peer evaluations, I was responsible for 100% of the authentication module, about 80% of the integration work, and 50% of the backend. So I also contribute to the project plan, the presentation, and our meeting minutes. Now, let me explain a couple of the bigger decisions I made and why. For authentication, I use something called GWT. So think of it like a signed digital pass. Once you are logging, the server gives you this pass, and you show it every time you make a request, instead of the server having to remember your login. So I choose this over the more traditional session approach because it's simpler to keep secure once your frontend and backend are sitting on two different addresses, which is exactly our setup. I also had to configure something called COIs. Basically, a secure rule that control which websites are allowed to talk to our backend. So I set this up carefully rather than just opening it up to everything. Because if you get this wrong, it works fine on your own laptop, but silently breaks the moment you deploy it to a real server. So, and that's actually a problem I ran into myself. I will come back to that. For the database, I designed it so that materials, summarized, and quizzes are connected through what's called junction tables. This just means one upload document can be used to generate multiple summarized or multiple quizzes, and the system keeps track of all those relationships cleanly. Here's something a bit different I want to highlight. On top of the basic logging, I actually went further and built a full two-factor authentication system. So after your password, you'd also need to enter a one-time verification code. I even built a testing tool that simulates 5 different types of attacks. Things like brute force password guessing, stolen credentials, phishing, and session hijacking. So I could compare how secure the system is with the versus without with extra layer. But, and this is the important part, we didn't end up using this in the final project, and that was a deliberate decision on my part, not because I couldn't get it working. Here's my reasoning. We built an AI study company, not a banking application or a government system. So the data at risk here is study notes and quiz scores, not any money or medical records. Adding two-factor authentication would mean the extra friction for the user. One more step every time they log in, and extra complexity on the backend. And that trade-off just isn't what is for an application like ours. So I made the call to keep the login simple and treat two-factor authentication as something we have already built and tested, ready to switch on later if the product ever need it. So I wanted to include this in my part today because it is real work I did, and honestly, knowing when not to use a feature is just as important a skill as knowing how to build it. A quick word on what I learned doing this project. Honestly, I started this project not really knowing React or Flask. I taught myself both from scratch. I mainly used the official documentation as my start point. So then supplemented that with online tutorials and video courses to see how things work in practice. And the biggest part of the learning, honestly, was just building the authentication and the integration features myself and debugging them until they worked. So that's where it's really sank in. Lastly, a bit about how this all came together with the team. Across the 12-week trimester, we meet with our supervisors 6 times as a group, roughly every 1 to 2 weeks. So we also had regular checking and feedback along the way. Along the way, I ran into quite a few problems that I had to work through on my own. The React frontend was sometimes fail when calling the Flex backend. I hit strange hidden bugs, specifically when calling the AI models API. So the verification code feature I built on the backend was something break when the frontend tried to use it. And once we actually deployed the whole project onto a server, new problems shown up, the COIS error and the issues connecting the backend to the database. I worked through every one of these on my own. A lot of continuous learning and just building up experience as I went. I did use AI tools to help along the way, but honestly, solving this problem really came down to having a solid technical foundation and being able to judge where the actual roots cause was. So not just patching the symptom. To sum up, I own the authentication, database design, and integration. I made deliberate technical decisions along the way, including knowing when to hold back a feature like two-factor authentication, and I pick up React and Flask from scratch while solving real development problems independently. Thank you.